Welcome back, my happy chapter. So, today is judgment. Um, First look, you may see USA, American, but then you hear me and it's no Irish. Call me Irish American today. But just like that, what I found in living in Ireland is there is a lot of judgment. Um, and it's not only on people in how they look. You could look fine to someone in how they would see people, but if they hear where you're from, then you're a total different character than what they see. And so I found this by living in Dublin and also while I was working in another part of Dublin. And so I stayed in Dublin for about 6 months in a place called Darndale, Buttercup Park. And what brought me to think of this was I was watching a film the other day, The Cardboard Gangsters. And Buttercup Park and Darndale was what it was about. And the type of people that you would normally have seen about Darndale. The type of happenings. But there's also so much more that happens that doesn't be seen. And why everything is happening the way it happens in these areas also doesn't be seen. And so later on in my life, what I found is when I was in a place called Rush, I was in this bar, Michael Collins bar. And there was some Irish music, students who would come in on a Thursday night and just randomly get up, each of them, and do a bit of singing and playing instruments, and it was quite enjoyable. And I got into chatting with these people. And as I was getting to know them and they were getting to know me, it came up about me living in Dublin for a short period of time. And as soon as I had mentioned Darndale, not only did they look at me different, they started speaking to me different and started to move away. But I called them out on it and questioned why you being such a way now. You know, just because I lived in a certain place doesn't make me out to be somebody that you're thinking. And it didn't. And even if a person was from Darndale and was a certain way that that person may have been seen, why are you influencing it? If somebody's chatting to you and you're chatting freely back and forth and everything's good, why would you influence the bad behavior and what you would be seeing in how it's seen as this type of a place that would hold such behavior? And so what I found was instant judgment because of an area. And I've always been a person to try not to judge, to wait to see and learn through my own experience without learning from what other people tell me about such a place or a person. And if they were right, they were right. But at least I got my own experience, my own truth out of it, and not run off a truth that somebody else has spoken. Because then that would be a lie. Just because it happened in how they seen it, doesn't mean that that's the truth. And that was only their experience. You could have caught a person, you could catch a person in a bad moment in their life, and they could come across like a certain being that you wouldn't normally hang with or want to know. But that doesn't make them who they are. There's so much to each and every one of us. But if we place a space and time that we've seen a person in a bad view, then that becomes that person because we decide to make them that person in that space and time. Is that fair? Because when you look back at yourself, what if you take out the worst moments in your time? And if people seen you in their moments, would that make you that person? Or is that just a feeling you got caught up in and it made you look in a certain way that you wouldn't like to be seen? But you know, it's not who you are. So I think we need to reel it back in a bit like fishing and make sure that line is secure and we know what bait's on the end of it. So we know what we're looking for. You see, if we're looking for pike and we're using, if we're looking for salmon and we're using a trout bait, well, it's highly unlikely we're going to get salmon. And if we're out looking for negativity, it's highly unlikely we're going to look or gain some good out of what we see around us. And so, if we see something that relates to something that's viewed out here as negative and we have attachments to that, then we're going to see it as negative. But we must keep an open mind to what is happening in the moment. You see, like my meeting with these people from Rush, what you could have seen before it was announced where I used to live, we were getting on great. We were having a good laugh. But one move changed it all. But saying that, well, it didn't really go that much further, but it could have been a lot better if I hadn't mentioned it. But I had nothing to hide, so why wouldn't I mention it? But saying that, how the flow of the conversation went to that moment and how it went afterwards was different. Because there was judgment. Not that I cared, but when I look back at it after watching that film and I think back, it popped into my head. I do think this isn't just Dublin. This is Ireland. This is people. This is everywhere. We are quick to judge because somebody's caught in a scene where it's seen to be negative, and we're not looking at how is that person? Are they okay? They may be angry or frustrated or something, but what's bringing that about? How are they feeling? What has caused this? They're not just doing it for no reason. There's something that's made them do that. They're feeling, they're hurting in some way or another for them to act out in such a way. And until it's looked at why people are doing what they do, why is this happening? Well, then it can't be fixed. Because we're supporting the happening by labeling people. Oh, well, they're such and such. They did this, they did that. What about all the times in their life that didn't do anything and they were helping others? Whether that person in that moment in time? No. But that person that was in that moment of time will be dragged into their life to make them be that way through judgment, by popularity of people, causing a vibration to linger off them onto that person. And so they become it more and more and more, the more judgment that there is. And so we start to see more scenes of this happening with these people because of the judgment. Obviously, they're holding a certain amount of that vibration within them, but we're just adding to it. We're enhancing on the power of that that's within them. But it doesn't make them who they are. We make that person who they are by the judgment, by creating more and more energy that relates to that in what we've seen in that one scene that became judging another. When we could be looking at that person and trying to help them sort out how they're feeling, how they are emotionally, what is bringing this on. Is there a way to get out of it? And there's always a way to get out of it. If there's a way to get in, there's a way to get out. And it's always an emotional feeling that is bringing this on, no matter what way you're looking at it. We just have to find what the emotion is and how that person's thinking that brings about that emotion, to sort it out, to redirect it into a different way of thinking and a different way of feeling, so they're not so upset that it's creating that anger inside that causes such a distressed scene to everyone else that they start to judge that person because it's unfair. And it's hypocritical, because we all have bad moments in our life and we're all not prim and proper in everything that we do. So we must, if we're going to judge someone else, we should start to look at ourselves and how we're going to do that. And maybe we'll hold back on the judgment and see what pain that person may be in. Anyway, this was a wee bit longer than I thought, but thank you for watching, and hopefully this gives you more of an understanding that we should hold back from judgment. And if we're feeling like judging another, maybe that's the moment we should look at ourselves. Have we ever been in this moment? Or what could be causing this moment to happen? Or is there something that we could do to help this person? Anyway, this happy chappy, love and peace.